Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, follow, and share.
Good morning and welcome to WNHH Radio's Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make the Elm City tick. Susan Bysiewicz makes our city and state tick, and she's just getting started. Susan is the Lieutenant Governor-elect of the state of Connecticut. She takes office in just over 3 weeks, but she's busy with the transition. She's here in the WNHH studio to let us know about her plans and the administration's plans for the next 4 years. And I want to give a thanks to Yale New Haven Hospital for providing support for today's program. Welcome back, Susan Bysiewicz.
It's so nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
So first of all, congratulations on winning.
Thank you.
That was a long campaign season.
It sure was.
But now you're going to be, now do you live in Hartford or are you going to stay in Middletown?
So I live in Middletown and planning to be there in central Connecticut. And I'm not like there's one lieutenant governor in our country that gets a residence with a staff.
Who's that?
That's the lieutenant governor of Pennsylvania. That's the only one. We found that out at the National Lieutenant Governors Association meeting. He was the only one that had that issue of having to move into the mansion. And I don't think he's going to do it, but
not the times for it now. People don't like that.
Absolutely.
They used to like that. They used to like our elected officials to kind of be grand and all that kind of stuff.
Right. And so I said to him, well, if you're not going to move in, what you should do is make sure that nonprofit groups could use it as a venue for fundraisers or events.
Yeah. So you went to a conference with other lieutenant governors. That's right. It was after you had that press conference at Gateway you were heading out,
exactly.
Right? Where was that?
So it was in Alexandria, Virginia, and there were about 30 sitting lieutenant governors and many lieutenant governors-elect that attended.
What did you pick up about lieutenant governors-elect? What did you find out when you talked to them? Anything in common?
So we have a lot in common, and each second in command, if you will, has a slightly different role. For instance, there are some secretaries of the state that have that role. That's not the case, obviously, in Connecticut. But I think the common duties are, in most states, the lieutenant governor presides over the state senate.
As you do in Connecticut.
As I'll be doing in Connecticut.
Does that mean you call to attention and stuff, or is it just tie-breaking votes?
No, it means you are there with the gavel, just as the Vice President Joe Biden was, or our current Vice President is, when the United States Senate is meeting. So when our state Senate convenes in January, I will be there presiding over the debate, making sure that the debate goes smoothly, that bills are voted on, and now that we have 23 Democrats who will be out of 36 instead of the 18-18 split that exists until January 9th, hopefully I will have fewer of those tie-breaking votes to make. I believe that Nancy Wyman, during her tenure, had to make over 18 tie-break votes.
Oh, we got a question. Alex Taubes, congratulations, Susan. You gave me my start in politics as a 9th grader. With an internship, you're the best. Alex, thanks for listening today.
Hey, and Alex was fabulous. And in fact, Alex took this beautiful picture of the state capitol, and that photo was emblazoned into the Secretary of the State certificates. Oh. So when people are honored, they still see Alex's artwork.
And now he's an attorney at a great law firm in New Haven.
He sure is, and great job. He's also run for office, and that I'll tell you that takes a lot of courage. So thanks, Alex, for doing that.
And you know a lot of people who run for office on the local level. We're going to get to that. We'll get to campaigning.
Yeah.
But first, we started going in Susan Bysiewicz into the role you're going to play as lieutenant governor. So one role is presiding over the Senate.
Right.
What else is in your portfolio? Because different lieutenant governors have seen the job in different ways. What do you have to do and what do you want to do?
Right. And obviously the other constitutional duty is if for some reason the governor can't serve, then the lieutenant governor steps up. But lieutenant governors have been active in a number of areas beyond presiding over the state Senate. So I will be helping with board and commission appointments. Also, economic development is going to be one of the major priorities that I have, and indeed the governor-elect has as well, because our two top priorities, and I know we're going to be talking about the transition, are how do we make a budget that's fair and balanced? That is priority number one, and make sure we do it on time and get it passed. And second is, how do we bring good-paying jobs and grow good-paying jobs to our state? And so I will be focusing on that. And I think it's sort of natural, given that I've spent a lot of time as a private sector lawyer helping small companies get access to capital so that they can grow and create jobs. And as Secretary of the State, we created a small business unit within the office. And so helping businesses grow will be something that I spend a lot of time on, and also workforce development, which is probably the most important thing.
That's a word for getting people ready for jobs, right?
That's right. And it's making sure that employers in our state have the talent that they need, because it didn't matter if Ned and I visited a small farm or a medium-sized manufacturing company or a Fortune 500 company, we'd always ask the business owner, what do you need? And the first thing that they would say is, we need more people with a CNC machinist license. We need more IT people. We need more engineers.
New Haven's got a great project starting at the district, which is our new high-tech hub in Fairhaven at the old Connecticut bus depot. They got millions of dollars in investment from the founder, Omid Yar of eBay and others, to do a second outpost of a Silicon Valley school for non-traditional learning for adults to become coders and computer techies.
That is really cool, and we've got to be.
Sounds like that's the kind of thing you're talking about.
Absolutely, and it involves one of the reasons we were at Gateway, actually, when we were announcing the creation of our transition committee, is that we wanted to highlight the very important role that community colleges and state colleges and universities will be playing in workforce development.
Susan Bysiewicz is the lieutenant governor-elect of the state of Connecticut. She's here on Dateline New Haven at 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. So, Susan, we're just talking about how lieutenant governors, in addition to what they have to do, will sometimes pick a subject to focus on and get some work done. Nancy Lyman is the outgoing lieutenant governor. I think we'd agree that she decided healthcare was going to be her big issue. Not that she didn't do other things, but she kind of oversaw the rollout of Obamacare in Connecticut, and we have the most respected Obamacare operation in the country.
We sure do, and she did a fantastic
So lieutenant governor has
job at
opportunity. Lieutenant governor could just sleep or go to parades, right? Or just go to the Senate and say, okay, your turn to talk now.
Right.
In years when it's not closely divided. But it sounds to me like you want to make something of the job.
Absolutely. What I learned as Secretary of the State is a job is as big as what you make of it. And it's like that even obviously in the private sector too. So when I was Secretary of the State, I had to do run the elections, and I also had to make sure that all the business filings were done. Concord, yes.
The golden word for reporters. Every day we're on that, looking who really owns what companies.
Of course. And so I would like to say that, like to believe that I made the job bigger, because we helped thousands of small businesses grow We registered voters. We honored veterans. We protected privacy. So healthcare will be part of my portfolio because as a result of the work that Nancy Wyman did in the rollout of Obamacare, the Lieutenant Governor's Office is involved with Access Health Connecticut.
What's the role? Head of the board?
Yep. And so there are some statutory duties because the office is actually mentioned in the statutes with respect to Access Health Connecticut. So that will be part of it, but I will spend lots of time on issues not just of helping small businesses and developing our workforce, but also helping Connecticut companies find trading partners overseas.
That mean you'll go to like trade shows?
International trade. Yep. We'll be working with Ann Evans, who's the director of the Department of Commerce for the Northeastern region. Her office happens to be in Connecticut, in Middletown, actually. And
the Northeastern region of
the United States Department of Commerce. So she helps companies, say, in the aerospace industry, find trading partners overseas. And so I will be working with her because one way Connecticut companies can grow is by doing more exporting.
Tell me about that. So it's customers when you say trading partners.
That's right.
What kind of exporting could you see us doing?
Well, we have, let's just look at some of our strengths. So aerospace is a huge opportunity. So as an example, in Australia, there is an area in Australia called Victoria. And in Victoria, they do a lot of aerospace manufacturing like we do. And in fact, they even work on the fighter jets that we are helping to produce at Pratt. So there is an opportunity because of all of the aerospace manufacturing that they do in Australia to work with our companies in Connecticut.
How would that work? Do they do complementary work or are they competitors?
They do. They're not competitors. They make different parts of the F-35. We do a lot of that here in Connecticut. So there are opportunities for our companies to work together with Australian companies.
We had a manufacturer here in New Haven called Aerospace Manufacturing many years, a couple of generations. I'm sure.
Is that John Soto's company?
Yep. And they sold to Meriden Company, still working there. So they moved to Meriden. And in that factory now is something called Lucky Climbers. It's a guy named Tom Lucky. He did these kind of way out playscapes for kids. They sell all over the world, the Middle East, California. They just moved into the old aerospace factory. They've grown twice, and they got lots of employees.
It is really neat. I'll give you another example because you asked about finding trading partners overseas. So there is a company called Thermax, and they're located in West Haven. And they were one of my small business clients that I started helping them. They make Thermax jackets, which keep heat in and help companies be more energy efficient. And when I started helping them, they had 10 employees. Now they have 80, and they sell their products all over the world. I think Yale is one of their clients. They put jackets on steam pipes.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's the jackets that help them be energy efficient.
Exactly.
Jacket with arms and stuff?
Jackets, they're wraparound insulated material. And it's very cool. They come with tags, so you can get information about how much energy they're saving. Very cool company.
So as Lieutenant Governor, what can you do for them?
Make sure that they know that the state of Connecticut and the Department of Commerce will help Connecticut companies find trading partners in Germany, in Brazil, in Russia, all over the world. There are trade missions that go to China where...
So you're going to be traveling a lot?
I don't know how much I'll be traveling, but I do intend to do some of that. Sounds
like a lot of it's connecting to what you already know exists, the people, like the programs exist.
Right. And that's a problem for businesses in our state. They may not be aware of that. Another part of my portfolio will be making sure that we do an accurate count for the United States Census.
Now, why is that part of your portfolio? Just something you chose to take on, or is there something
Well,
specific?
it's something that I did when I was Secretary of the State in 2000 and in 2010. And it's important to our state because $8 billion of federal funding comes to Connecticut because of how many people we have in our state. And if you divide the $8 billion by 3.5 million, that's basically $2,200 a person, give or take.
You've done the math.
Yeah.
And so how does the secretary, like, for instance, there's that big issue with Secretary Ross in the Commerce Department putting through a rule that immigrants won't be, there'll be immigrant questions. So if you're not a citizen,
there's a checkbox, right? And that's a question.
So how would you deal with that?
Well, the governor-elect and the attorney general-elect and I think are all on the same page. Our current attorney general, George Jepson, is one of the people that filed suit against the current administration, saying that shouldn't be on there. But no matter how that Supreme Court case turns out,
we're not betting on the attorneys general winning that one, are we?
Probably not.
Yeah.
And so, Mayor Bronin and I were at the census kickoff today in Hartford, and our message to people across the state is you don't have to answer that question, and we need you to participate.
So they'll count your
Sure.
form? Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to answer every question. And also, we want people to know also that their whatever information that they fill out on a census form is confidential.
So what's your role specifically going to be? Getting out the word by going to press conferences like today? Are you going to do anything from the Lieutenant Governor's office through that office specifically that's going to help the census?
We'll be working with the many partners, and we will be working in particular with mayors and first selectmen across the state to get the word out. About 17% of the households in our state don't have access to internet.
Really?
So, yep.
Okay.
And there are many hard to count areas,
Right.
and a lot of the hard to count areas are urban areas. So we want to make sure that we have partnerships with community organizations, libraries, schools, to get the message out.
So is it fair to say that in addition to the duties you're going to take on as Lieutenant Governor by statute or law, including health care and overseeing the Senate and being ready to step in if something got
and economic development.
So
Yep.
economic development and census are the two big issues taken on?
They are. I think economic development is huge.
Anything else in economic development? You're going to connect people for overseas trading partners, get them Commerce Department
Right.
plans.
Also, make sure that small businesses have access to the resources that they need to succeed. That's something that I did in the Secretary of the State's office. We had special programs for small and women-owned and minority-owned businesses.
Are you looking forward to this job?
I really am.
How come?
I really am. Because I have a great relationship with the governor-elect. One of the reasons we decided to team up was that we were on the same page about the things that we need to do to move our state forward. And so it's been a lot of fun to campaign with him and now to be in the throes of...
That must be hard for any politician, because any politician, you throw yourself out there when you run for office. You very much wanted to be governor along with lots and lots of people. And you were his leading competitor. And then you decide to join forces after being opponents. How do you do that psychologically when you say, okay, I'm not going to get the prize?
You know, I think it would be more difficult if I didn't really like and respect Ned as much as I do. I think it would be harder with a different candidate. It might have been harder, but with Ned, it was easy because he's a very open and generous and good-natured person, and I think his personality is really great for the job of being governor. He's a very collaborative a person that likes to work with a lot of people. He naturally is out seeking ideas. He's an idea guy. He's a big picture guy. And I think the people of Connecticut are going to enjoy having him be our governor. And I think we've already sort of put a process into place where we've said, hey, our state is facing some huge issues, especially around the budget and the economy. And we want all good ideas. And so we put a transition team together that has
about twice the size of the population of Connecticut. No.
The transition team, I think, has like 24, 25 official members.
Oh, that's all? I've been seeing these huge lists.
But I think what you're seeing is
the committees.
All of the committees and all the participants. And when we went to Eastern Connecticut State University to have our first meeting of all the different policy groups, and we pretty much took over the entire university because there were 15 different committees and lots of people on each one. It was quite amazing to stand in one of the big halls and see almost 400 people who.
So how do we make sure we get some of that? Like, it would seem to me from the outside there are two main goals with the transition committee.
Mm-hmm.
One would be to think about the big ideas, because you have a reset. Even though you come from the same party, you got new people coming in, times have changed. Let's look every 4 or 8 years at what our policy should be. So that's one issue. But then the other thing is finding the right talent for jobs in the administration. Does the transition team have both those goals, or mostly a policy?
So the transition team is there to assist Ned and I with choosing good people.
Okay, so you'll have a committee, let's say in banking or in economic development, say here's some
education, healthcare. But the transition team is also participating with all of the policy committees. So the policy committees have taken our platform that we ran on, and we've said, look, this is the basis for where we think we should be going, but take a look, vet that, tweak it, add, give us other good ideas, tell us what other states are doing.
How do you
that
make
you
sure
like.
Those ideas are going to get subsumed? Because, I mean, you and I have seen so many of these kind of committees over the years where a really interesting report gets produced, and then it really does sit on a shelf, and now be sitting inside a
right.
disk drive.
And that's what Ned's fond of saying. You know, we don't intend to get a plan that fills up a big binder and then it just sits collecting dust. We and the way that we are engaging people, I think, is much different. I've never seen such a sort of open process and have business leaders, labor leaders, Republicans, Democrats, unaffiliated sit and talk. And so
I did notice you did a good job of getting a wide group of people.
You know what? When Ned and I addressed that group, it was clear from the podium that you could see people from all parts of the state and all walks of life. And I think the results are going to be very exciting, and the public will have more of an opportunity to participate because shortly the transition policy groups will be putting forward their findings, and then we're going to ask the public for their thoughts. And then those will get incorporated, and then that will be the roadmap that Ned and I will take to Hartford on January 9th, because that's the goal, to be ready to lead on January 9th.
And you're listening to Susan Bysiewicz, Lieutenant Governor-elect, talk about her plans for the upcoming administration here on Dateline New Haven, 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenpen.org. Aaron Good writes in on Facebook. Thank you for listening, Aaron Good. Aaron Good always asks good questions on these shows. Gets the mayor good question
as his
every week.
Name would seem to imply.
Yeah. He's, does Lieutenant Governor-elect Bysiewicz think there should be a new person, and specifically a woman, as Connecticut Democratic Party chair? And that's a good question, because that's a lot of discussion these days. Ned Lamont has not. It's often up to the governor. He has not said whom he wants to have as the party chair.
There you go. Well, let me just say to Aaron that more women in leadership roles at every level, whether it's the state party or cabinet secretary position, in business, in local government, I'd love to see that. And I think that Ned has been extremely clear that he wants to have a highly qualified and competent, diverse staff and leadership. And I think when we announced that Melissa McCaw would
First
be
African-American woman to be the budget chief.
at OPM, I think that sets the tone. So I don't know who will be the new party chair. I do believe that person should be someone that the governor chooses.
I was going to say, you really defer to Ned on this one, right?
Well, I'll say that I defer to Ned, but I will also say that Ned always asks for my opinion.
I mean, publicly.
What?
I mean, that's one thing I wanted to ask you about that transition when you were sort of out front as the governor candidate, and some people thought, some of us who don't always know so much about how elections really work, thought you were the leading candidate and everything. You had to step into a new role there. So I thought you did it very well as lieutenant governor. I thought you never stepped in front of Lamont, but you added to the skill set, which is that you'd campaigned a lot more. So I remember once he got thrown the first time the question, well, you're a rich guy, what do you know about people? He kind of stuttered, and you just stepped forward and started naming other rich people who had done very well in public service. But you also had a lot more experience going around to towns and talking to people. And just how did you make that transition? Because I did notice you weren't calling attention to Susan. You talked about Ned a lot, but you also were connecting with people you had met over years on the hustings.
And I'll say that I think it just goes to why we're a good team. He's a business person. He's a big picture guy. He's always thinking about how we can solve our state's problems. And I've been in both state government and in the private sector. And I have the great privilege of knowing lots of people all over the state. So we are a good team because I know the nuts and bolts of state government. And I come from a business background too, but it's more of the small business background.
But I just noticed, like, when you answer this question, you need to be careful not to overstep the governor, right? So you're going to talk to him in private about what you think. But am I wrong in assuming here that you're not going to get out front in a public forum and like say, yes, we should have a woman as state chair, or no, we should keep Nick Boletto? That you're going to have a general thought of whether your principles are. You made a general statement about women in leadership, but that you'll probably talk privately. Lamont, is that right? Is that the way it works? He's the governor.
He's the governor-elect. He's a good friend. He trusts my opinion, and we have a great relationship.
I mean, if you disagree about something, can you publicly state that, or is it better to just kind of keep a lid on things for 4 years?
So far, I'll be honest, we've not disagreed on any major issue, and I think that was one of the reasons why it was easy to team up with him, because I'll tell you, if I had a philosophical problem with a lot of his ideas, that
you
probably,
with him.
I wouldn't have
what
made that decision.
What surprised you the most on the campaign trail? Because, I mean, you had a chance. You've been out every couple of years in Connecticut, really everywhere. You're in every nook and cranny of the state. You see what's going on at the state. What did you notice this time in 2018 that was different?
I have to say, what surprised me most about the general election campaign was how little Mr. Stefanowski and Mr.
Republican candidate,
right, were engaging with the voters.
It was kind of an interesting strategy, actually. You guys were everywhere, and you talked to reporters and everything like that. And their strategy, I didn't know that it was necessarily a bad strategy. They did lose. If they gotten 3 more percentage points, we would have said it was brilliant. They were going to say one thing the whole candidate. First of all, they weren't going to show Joe Markley because he's very, very conservative. And the governor candidate was just going to say, I'm going to lower your taxes. I'm going to lower your taxes. Ned's going to raise them. I'm going to lower them. What do you eat for breakfast? I'm going to lower your taxes.
Right.
That wasn't necessarily a bad strategy. I don't know.
Well,
I mean, it lost.
It lost, and here's the other thing that I would say, that there were a lot of people who said, no matter what you do or say, the Democrats aren't going to win because Governor Malloy is so unpopular. It's been 8 years. It's time for a change. And when we went back and looked and said, okay, when was the last time a Democratic candidate for governor and lieutenant governor won after a Democratic administration had been in place. And that goes back to 1887,
Wow.
right? So it's always good to know that something is not, it's good not to know it was impossible or it'd been more than 100 years, right? Since that had happened. But it was just surprising because I've never seen a Republican candidate for governor not want to engage
It was interesting.
or opine on really
Anything.
important issues. Yeah,
Really
anything.
Even climate change.
Even climate change, choice. He
was disciplined,
Mhm.
but it might have been a disciplined strategy. It didn't prevail.
But here's the other thing. When you are running for statewide office, you want to meet as many voters as you can meet and talk to as many people as you can, because every conversation you have, you learn something.
And I do want to
about
get
our
back
state.
to that. I wanted Dave Deckler wrote in. Thank you for listening, David Deckler. To help fix the state budget, will there be early outs for state workers, meaning early retirement offers? That it's interesting he asked that question because there was a news story yesterday that you're being warned of a looming surge in retirements, that you might have more retirements than when you want to. So you're getting this question from both sides, Susan Bysiewicz. Will you be encouraging people to retire early, or are you going to have some kind of challenge with too many people retiring who know how to run the place?
Well, first of all,
Or cost of pensions?
first of all, we are in the process of choosing the very best people to help us lead, and there has been a surge of interest in people who want to be part of state service. So I have no doubt that we will have the people we need to serve. So I'm not worried about the retirement.
Well, that's leadership. But doesn't retirement mean in the trenches too?
It does, but that will be within the purview of those cabinet secretaries that the governor appoints to recruit people if necessary. And I'll just tell you that we've had hundreds and hundreds of people who have put in the resume into the transition website. So I feel confident
So
we'll have
people. And the question to David's question, are you going to be encouraging people to retire early?
Right now, I don't think that those determinations have been made yet, because right now we are looking at all of the options that we have to make a budget that will get us to the $2 billion, give or take. And thank you, Kevin Lembo, for telling us that, we're a little $250 million ahead of where we thought we might be. So maybe the deficit is $1.7 billion instead of $2 billion. But it is our goal to close that gap without raising taxes, because we understand that people are very burdened right now with
and
taxes.
Ned Lamont was quoted saying he will not dip into the rainy day fund for that because he said it's not a rainy day, and that there might be a rainy day in the not too distant future where one more year and we'll have the longest recovery from a recession on record.
That's right.
And are you holding fast to that? Not dipping into a rainy day?
Look, I think
closing a center or something.
Yeah, I think that there is always room for discussion with the legislature, and that's what the budget negotiations are about. So the governor will put forward his budget, and then there'll be a negotiation with the legislature. My personal preference would be that if we have a rainy day fund, then we keep it for a rainy day, or we invest some of it in paying down our many unfunded liabilities, because two big looming liabilities are state employee pensions, teacher retirement pensions, same. And so I think that when you ask people, what's a rainy day fund? Because a lot of people have their own, right, for their families.
We have one at our business, yeah.
That's right. And you save that for when you really need it. And sometimes you make the decision to pay down debt with it. And I think that's a really smart thing.
Idea.
Mm-hmm.
So Deckler said, is it a yes or no answer for early outs? And I thought I heard you say that you have no plans. You're looking at a lot of options.
Right. We haven't presented the plan, but watch shortly after January 9th, because I know that the governor and I want to put forward a budget sooner rather than later, because what we don't want to happen is what's happened in the past, where there is months and months of wrangling with our legislative leaders. And to that point, one of the very first things that the governor-elect and I did was to meet with the Republican legislative leaders and the Democratic legislative leaders, because we think it's important to take all good ideas. And it doesn't matter which side of the aisle they come from. We've already reached out, and I have to say, both the Democrats and the Republicans, were welcoming and open.
All right, you're listening to Lieutenant Governor-elect Susan Bysiewicz on Dateline New Haven and WNHH 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. So what did surprise you the most? What was different campaigning in every nook and cranny of Connecticut in 2018 from all those other years?
Just that Ned and I would go everywhere, and Republicans were nowhere to be found.
That's interesting.
But
independents sure were. There are more independents than Democrats in the state.
Mm-hmm. It was just surprising that we would get calls. How do you feel about this issue, that issue? Federal issues would come up, and if we thought it was important for state voters to know where we were, we'd let people know where we were. And the silence on the other side was just deafening. It was just surprising to run a campaign where we were talking about every conceivable issue that we thought.
And it was a year when the Republicans thought they really had a good chance of winning, too.
And that, I have to say that it was, Ned and I were very proud to campaign with so many great state representative candidates and state Senate candidates. And who would have thought that Alex Bergstein from Greenwich would beat Scott France? It was just truly amazing. Or Will Haskell, a 22-year-old who just graduated from college in Westport and beat Tony Boucher.
It was Blue Wave.
Blue Wave.
So one thing, my favorite day on your campaign trail was when you were in the Heights in New Haven, the Heights neighborhood, and you're with Arthur Natalino, who's been working on elections since the days of Dick Lee in the 1960s. He rounds up the vote, and our reporter Alan Appel was following you, and everyone you stopped was related to him. Just who happened to drive by, walk by on a door. And I guess that's kind of partly how you win elections, right? That's where you go. I mean, you did have a record vote here in New Haven. You had something like, what, $23,000 margin? 23,000 vote
we
margin.
Were thrilled. We were thrilled, but, life is like a piano. You get out of it what you put in. And Ned and I visited so many neighborhoods and groups in New Haven. And so that was thrilling. But what I loved about that afternoon, it wasn't necessarily different from other parts of the state, because what I know from campaigning in a small state, 3.5 million people, is there's 1 degree of separation. In that neighborhood,
there's less than a degree. Everyone's a Natalino.
Right, everyone's a Natalino. But we did go visit people in that neighborhood that weren't related.
But he had helped get like their sidewalk fixed or something.
Yes, but also, I visited a gentleman whose daughter got an essay contest prize writing about one of her favorite sites in Connecticut with the tourism department. And he said, my daughter won that prize. She wrote about the Merritt Parkway. I said, oh, yes, I remember that essay. So it was nice to meet people that I had personal connections with. And
I
think
so many of those from doing statewide campaigns back since the 90s. I was wondering, what kind of memory do you have? Because we're around the same age. I'm a tiny bit older than you. We graduated Yale like a year apart.
We sure did.
I don't remember anyone's name. Now, you're famous for going to every small town and taking every vote. You had a very spirited challenge for lieutenant governor primary, and you really just earned it. You went to every town, and you knew people, and you got them out to the polls. Can you remember a lot more names than the average person? Or do you have like a good program on your phone?
No. So my husband always teases me because we could be driving through Sprague, for example, And Sprague has several suburbs. It's a town in eastern Connecticut. So there's Baltic or Versailles.
I never heard
or
of those two.
Hanover. Actually, 3.
Those
Hanover.
are suburbs of Sprague? Sprague has suburbs.
They do. They have multiple main streets, too.
Wow.
So, and we were talking about this because I was going to the Sprague Rod and Gun Club for an event with Senator Austin last week.
Wow.
But my husband always teases me, and he'll say, "So, how many delegates from Sprague are there?" And I'll say 2, and then he'll say, "And what are their names? And what did they eat for breakfast?" And I usually know.
Well, not the breakfast.
Yeah, not the breakfast, but I'll know. I
Can
might
I
know
ask
their
you-
pet's name.
Can I give you pop quizzes? This might be totally unfair, so we don't have to do it.
Oh my goodness!
169 towns with Democratic town committees. I randomly looked up some towns I never have visited and looked up the names of the town chair. Would you like to try to guess or not?
We can try, but I bet that the list that you have, if it's from the Blue Book.
No, it's from the
isn't-
web on the Democratic Party.
Okay, so let's try it.
Would you rather give you the name of the person or the town? I can give you the name of the person. You can say what town.
Okay, go ahead. Either way.
Because this is really unfair. I mean, it's a very 169.
Right. Okay.
You want to try a couple?
Sure, why not?
It's okay if you don't get them right.
Yep.
Richard Wolkowitz. What town is he the Democratic town chair of?
Oh, goodness. So he's from one of the Northwest Connecticut towns. And
That is that. I consider that.
yeah.
I consider that the right answer.
Yep. So
I'll give you a hint. There's a bridge near there.
Cornwall.
There you go. Susan Bysiewicz. That is amazing. Oh, my goodness. Okay, I'm going to give you one more. 'Cause
All right.
I feel it's a little
Go
unfair.
ahead.
Okay.
All right.
Betsy Hellman.
Betsy Hellman. I want to say Woodbridge.
Very close. Very close.
Okay.
It starts with a vowel, but not A, E, or I.
Yeah, and so you'll have to help me because I'm not sure she still is the chair. But go
Anyway, you're right. You said the Valley, and it is Oxford. That is good. And do you know Susan M. Smith?
ahead. Susan. So she, I want to say, might be from Scotland.
Whoa! She is from Scotland.
And I'll
Most
tell
of us
you,
in Connecticut have
but-
never been to Scotland.
well, and I'll tell you that I'm not
I just
sure
remember there was a Klan rally there, like in the 80s, right? Or
that
something.
Scotland has that the Democratic Town Committee hasn't been active there for
Susan,
quite
how
some
did
time.
you remember who was the Democratic town chair of Scotland? There are 169 municipalities. Already in this interview, you have named people who ran for state senate. You talked about who, I mean, you have other layers of names, not just the town chair. How do you remember this level? How do you know there's someone in the
'Cause-
valley named Betsy Hellman? How do you know someone in the
because
northwest
I've
corner?
been to, I try to regularly visit every town and to stay in touch with our party leaders, and you do that when you are preparing for a state convention or you're helping candidates.
But most people
run
have
and
someone
win.
whispering in their ear, okay, now you got to talk to that person, you can pop it on your phone. Like I lie in bed sometimes when I can't sleep, I try to name all 30 members of the New Haven Board of Alders. And I see that I'm there and I still have a hard time. I don't know how you get like multiple levels of people in 169 towns. I mean, that's probably why you're in politics and why you won. Yeah.
So, I think, and here's actually, I will say that when you go door to door, and I did this when I first ran for a state representative, that is when you realize the power of personally reaching out to
People
each
care to be
voter.
recognized. People really care that you know their name, you see their face.
And
I always
it's-
feel terrible when I know someone I can't think of the
and
name.
it's powerful, right?
Yeah.
When you
Saying you
meet
count.
someone,
Says you
yeah,
count.
you matter and your opinion matters. And, I may not always remember everyone's name, but even, I was running for state representative 20 years ago, and someone will say to me, "Oh, I lived in Durham and you were the first and only person that ever knocked on my door." And I'll say, and where do you live? And then they'd say Creamery Road. And I'd say, "Oh, yeah, I remember. You live in the brick house with the green shutters." So I
So you
might
do
not
have a
have
good memory. Did you have photographic memory as a kid?
I had a pretty good memory as a kid, and
But not
hopefully
photographic.
that'll continue.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I can't find my glasses half the time. They're in my head. But now I don't feel guilty about giving you those unfair questions because you got them right.
Oh,
that was
Most of them. That's
Scotland.
pretty cool.
Oh, no, you were within like the GPS of each one.
okay.
You know which part of the state. You got Scotland, which was amazing.
And
So that I'm really
they need to
impressed with that.
revitalize their town committee,
Okay,
though.
let me just okay. That's the other part. Like, how do you know that? Okay. Anyway, I want to talk about some issues that it might be premature for you to talk about because you're still in the transition phase of looking at the big picture. Some of the issues that will be on New Haven's radar coming up, and you heard some of this. One is that New Haven is, Mayor Tony Harp talks about this. We get reimbursed for a lot of our schools from the state, like a lot of people at towns, educational cost sharing formula. And that formula is based on how many students used to be in New Haven. Our city has grown, especially our school population, but we're still getting reimbursed at that level, whereas towns that have lost students are getting as much money as they used to get. Is that something you can fix?
We have discussed this exact issue because in addition to meeting with the Democratic and Republican legislative leaders right after we got elected, the next meeting that we had was with the mayors of our 5 largest cities. So it was interesting because we had Mayor O'Leary from Waterbury, Mayor Bronin.
You did this on Willow Street, yeah.
Yep, Mayor
Tom Breen was
Ganem,
out there, yeah.
Mayor Harp. And the first issue that came up from each of them was education funding. And we know that that is the most important thing really for every town and city in the state, regardless of
someone's going to lose
size.
and someone's going to win.
That's right. And what Ned and I have said is we're going to be very open and transparent because if you will think back to the issue of the $500 million that Hartford got from the bailout from the legislature.
It's a sore point down here.
Yes. And it was put into the budget late at night. I don't think legislators were fully appreciating the magnitude of the bailout because I think, 50 million was, or in the tens of millions was part of the conversation, but not the 500 million over a period of years. And that's not the way Ned and I would like to govern.
What's this thing about ECS, school funding, is that, okay, we have this Democratic near supermajority in both houses, Democrats at all the top offices. But it was Democrats who screwed New Haven 3 years ago and led to that state judge ruling that we have an unconstitutional funding system. Because to get Democratic votes for a budget in the caucus, now it's not your job, this is the legislature's job. They brought on the suburban Democrats to support the budget, and they did that by giving more money in the end to like Westport than to Bridgeport, which is what really got Judge McAllister's ire up. How are you going to finesse that, given that it's not just a Democrat versus Republican political system, it's a city versus suburb?
Well, again, I think being open and transparent and having public hearings is really important. And there's going to be pushing and pulling, but we're going to be much more collaborative, open, and transparent. And I think people already see that our style is much different than the former governor. And I also think it's very important for us to work closely with our municipal leaders, all of them, from the smallest towns, the Scotlands and the Spragues.
I'm still blown
to
away
the
by
biggest
Scotland.
cities.
You knew the Democratic town committee there is like not meeting enough.
Defunct, yeah.
Have you been following the issue of the design of a second parking garage at Union Station, the train station?
A little bit.
It's got a hilarious backstory. For 20 years, New Haven said, "State, please give us a garage. Please give us a garage. Our first garage is full." So John Rowland was a Republican governor. John DeStefano was Democratic mayor who wanted to be governor. So they kept always trying to poke at each other so Rowland wouldn't release the money. Malloy comes in and says, "I'm going to give you the money." Malloy comes through with the money. And now New Haven says, "We don't like your garage. Things have changed. People aren't driving as much. We want to plan for a future that's more transit-oriented development. We want offices and stores there. We want pedestrian walkways over the Long Wharf. We want bus depot." And Malloy said, "Take the money or not." Now he's kind of moving pretty fast to get this through. Now the city's saying, we might not even want the garage at all. We want to do different stuff with that land. What do you think?
I am so happy that New Haven is thinking more about transit-oriented development. I think one of the reasons that the city of New Haven is on the upswing is because they built There's a beautiful elite apartment building that's a block from the train station. There's all kinds of
the new train station. You mean?
Yes,
yeah, the one on State Street.
Exactly.
State, yeah.
And there is a lot of foot traffic, lots of great business activity, and I have visited a bunch of other cities on the campaign trail. Meriden's another example of amazing transit-oriented development that they've just started. So they have a new train station. It's beautiful. And Ned and I stood at that train station and looked across several hundred yards, and you see beautiful new apartment buildings, several hundred units, mixed use, some for seniors, some for low income, some for market rate, within a block or two.
Would you like to see that plan stalled?
So Ned and I have been clear that we want to encourage transit-oriented development, and we want to work with the chief elected officials on this. I'll tell you that in Norwalk and in Fairfield, both CEOs of those towns, Mike Chetro in Fairfield, Harry Rilling in Norwalk, they've seen huge numbers of people move into new apartments that are literally.
So is it fair to
say
that you can't right now give specifics of what the Lamar administration is going to do on every single proposal?
And
but you're saying conceptually that you want to work with local officials and you want to see more TOD.
Yeah, and I'll say, right, I think this probably always happens at the end of administration. An administration has some projects that they want to keep pushing through because they've made commitments, and the new administration may have some different opinions.
All right. What do you do for fun, Susan Bysiewicz?
So,
besides knowing about the details of Scotland's Democratic Town Committee,
couple of things. My husband and I love to go hiking on Connecticut hiking trails, and one of our favorites is Wadsworth. That's on the border of Middletown and Middlefield. It's beautiful, beautiful state park. We love going hiking there, and we're looking forward to doing some more hiking. And during the spring and summer, we love gardening. I grew up on a farm, so we love growing organic vegetables and fruit.
What's your favorite vegetable to grow?
Well, I have to say that there is nothing like a homegrown tomato with fresh basil.
Yeah.
And I am Polish, Greek, and Italian, and so there's nothing like good eggplant, but the bugs always eat our eggplant. I got to figure that out. Yeah.
Get through the tough skin?
You know what? You never get to that because the bugs always eat the leaves off the plants, and we never get the eggplant.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, so we're going to keep working on it.
What are your holiday plans in addition to planning the transition to become the Lieutenant Governor of Connecticut?
We'll be spending Christmas Eve with my sister Gail and my kids and our extended family. We're looking forward to it.
Well, I hope you get a few hours off.
I hope so.
Okay, Susan Bysiewicz, thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Congratulations again for winning election as our next Lieutenant Governor of the state of Connecticut. Good luck.
It's been fun being with you.
Thanks to Yale New Haven Hospital for their support of this program. Thanks to all the people who sent in questions. They were excellent questions, as always. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD A Plea for Peace. Now we know what it's like to be free. We just got to remember to book our flight. Fly free with us all day and all night long here at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.